Of this great gathering, would you please make welcome my brother and your brother as well, the founder and president of the Institute for African Man Development in Washington, D.C., Mr. Chester Marshall.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy that you have chose to be a part of this labor of love that we call Institute for Black World, Black Family Summit. I want to say thank you to Malcolm Stokes out of Oakland, bringing the music to us. Appreciate you. And I am more than proud, in place of my mentor, a man that I love as much as I love myself, maybe even more, who needs no introduction, Dustin. Now I've spoke with Baba, and he wants you to know that he loves you. He wishes he could be here, but the spirit of the Dunston family is here with us. And for those of you who know the Dunston family, you know what they're about. They're about loving and serving other people. And so we really, really do want to lift them up during this time. We are here for the Black Family Summit. And I'm going to give you a little history about the Black Family Summit just to provide some context. The Black Family Summit is a outpouring of a vision by Minister Louis Farrakhan in response to hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And the minister felt like that we need to have a collective with Black organizations so that they can come together for African descended people. And he took his vision to Institute for Black World, Dr. Daniels and Baba Dunston, and asked them during the Millions More celebration at Howard University, which was in 2000, I can't remember. 4 years ago? Okay, I can't remember the years. I'm having a, over 50 moment. Yeah, right. So it was during the Millions More movement. Nana, do you remember the year? Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have put people on spot like that, so I can't remember. But it was during that time I asked Dr. Daniels and Baba Dunston to form a collection of organizations in response to Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, but also in the time of need of Black people, that we need to have a program apparatus to respond to our needs. And let me just, in the interest of time, read what the working mission statement for the Black Family Summit is, just to give you context. And I'm gonna put on my eyes. The Black Family Summit of the Institute for Black World is a national network of primarily Black professional organizations, institutions, and agencies committed to the preservation and strengthening of the Black family in various forms as a foundation for the survival, restoration, and development of Black communities, nations, and in the United States and worldwide. Consistent with the vision of IBW, the mission of the Black Family Summit is rooted in the values cooperation, collaboration, and collective work as reflected in the traditional way of the life of African people of life of Africa. Adhering to the principles of the operational unity, Black Family Summit will pursue its mission through the formulation of a holistic private and public programs, projects, and initiatives. So that's just kind of the mission statement. But really what it's all about today is hearing from some very, very dynamic people who I will introduce in one section, or in a minute. But let me first say that the Black family can be best understood as embedded in a Euro-American milieu, but it gets its shape and form from its African origins. By nature, American by nurture. African root, American fruit. Like me, from time to time, you want to put in for a family transfer just because, you know how families sometimes, you can't choose your family. So sometimes, but it never worked out. I always had to stick with my family. But one thing is clear, that the family unit that you come from really does shape morally, socially, who you are. And when I saw this young man who is from where I'm from, and anytime you see somebody from Chicago and they've actually made it, you always ask the question, how did they do it? Because it's just really, really, really difficult for a young person to transition out of there alive, and not only alive, but doing well and headed in the right direction. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel so we can get on with this very, very, what is to be a dynamic discussion about the Black family. So the principal speaker, well, you've already been introduced to our dynamic moderator, the Reverend Nick Talaferro, and you can't take a collection because I don't have any money. Our principal speaker for today is Nana Patricia Newton. She is the medical director, CEO and medical director of Black Psychiatrists of America and the co-chair of the IBW FEMA Task Force. She's out of Baltimore, Maryland. Just raise your hand so they'll kind of know who you are when I introduce you. We have Renee McDonald. She is a member of Mothers in Charge from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have Arnell Prim. She is the convener of All Healers Mental Health Alliance out of Baltimore, Maryland. We have my sister and yours, Oliver. She is the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers, and she is out of Atlanta. Hey, y'all, she brought her people with you. You see, yeah. We have Dr. Mwada Kevin Washington. He is the president of the Association of Black Social Workers. Psychologist. I'm sorry, brother. You know how it is. And he is out of Washington, D.C. And we have Anola Aird. Am I saying that right? Aird? Yes, ma'am. And she is the president of Community Healing Network, and she is out of New Haven, Connecticut. We have Carlisle Holder, the immediate past president of the National Associations of Blacks in Criminal Justice. And he is out of Claremont, Florida. We have my brother and yours, Joseph Muhammad. He's the past president of the International Association of Black Professional Firefighters and co-chair of the IBW FEMA Task Force, and he is out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. We have Salim Adolfo, vice president of National Black United Front, and he is out of Jersey City. All right. Thank you very much, and I will come back at you with closing remarks, and we know that you're going to enjoy this very insightful. Excuse me.
Can you hear me? Okay, wonderful. So I will introduce myself. My name is Renee Hatcher. I am sitting in for my sister and colleague, Vicki Willis. I am currently a professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law in the Community Development Clinic and a member of the National Conference of Black Lawyers.
So sorry, y'all. Her name wasn't on there, but what you say, sister, you're going to introduce yourself. I got you. All right, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I promise that we're going to have a panel discussion. I promise you we will. There is one bit of housekeeping that has been brought to my attention, and I'd like to bring it to someone who is the owner of a Ford Escapade. It's blue-gray, with a New Jersey tag, G30856. Your door is left open. And it's like that song says, it's knowing that your door is always open and your furniture is gone. So you want to make sure that if that is your car, that you close that door. All right. Before we get started in full fashion, we want to set the tone by having a brief presentation that will center in the issue of the nurturing and the sustaining and the enhancing of Black families. And we will do that now by bringing back to you a woman who was introduced a few moments ago, that you will hear from her again, and then we will start our panel discussion directly thereafter. Please make welcome once again, Dr. Patricia Newton, the CEO and Medical Director of Black Psychiatrists of America.
All these tall people. Hotep, everybody.
Hotep.
I want to first of all thank you all for not going to sleep and staying here on this last panel of the afternoon. And before we get started, I'd like to give homage and honor to Dr. Ron Daniels and the First Lady, Mrs. Daniels, and Sister Rosalind Prudhomme for all the work and hard labor that they do to make this conference a success. And in so doing, as our sister Susan Taylor did, continue to lift up in prayer Baba Leonard Dunstan, who this was his vision and creation to have the professional organizations. He and Sister Gladys are in need of our prayers, and whatever the Creator wishes, we will all be with them no matter what. The topic today is interesting because it talks about the sustainability and enhancing the Black family. And while I was looking for this topic, I came across an article from the 1920 Baltimore Sun, listed by H.I. Mencken. And here's what he said. Actually, it was July 26, 1920. As democracy is perfected, the office of the president represents more and more closely the inner soul of the people. On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be occupied by a downright fool and a complete narcissistic moron. End of quote.
That's right.
Just saying.
Just saying.
In the context of that statement, as we talk about the Black family, we have to look at what that means in terms of how we are to survive. And I'm a student of the martial arts, 3rd degree Black belt. Don't let this little fat lady fool you. And so I spent a good deal of time looking at how you survive. And how many of you are familiar with the book, The Art of War? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I want to start with this quote as I describe the tone for what we need to be discussing. And in The Art of War, it says, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, hear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy or yourself, you will succumb in every battle. The question for us as a Black family is, do we know ourselves? And if we know ourselves, what are we afraid of? The orange man cannot touch us. And as a result of that, we have to be about the business of growing and defining our realities. And so I want you to take a pen for a minute and write down my formula that I have for sustaining and enhancing the Black family. It's called the 7 Ds plus me equal BFSE. Let me repeat it again. 7 Ds plus me equal BFSE. Those 7 Ds plus me, the human being, will equal the Black family sustaining and enhancing. And what are those 7 Ds? Let me read them in general, and let me go through them in specifics. And your panel, of course, who are all experts, who any one of them could be up here having this discussion. The first one is defining. Who are we as a family? Are we a nuclear family? Are we a community family, or are we global? What is interesting is that we must define ourselves. And what has happened to us as a result of the trauma that we have endured for so many, I would say, is that one thing that occurs over time with trauma is that the brain begins to short circuit. And when it short circuits, it develops something we call in neurology neural cement. It's stuck in your own stuff. And getting stuck in your own stuff causes the impulses that you need to go to the CEO of the brain, which are the frontal lobe. Y'all didn't know y'all was coming to neurology class, did you? Okay. Well, so that you end up being cut off from the portion of the brain that allows you to make rational decisions, decisions for your own best self-interest. And so you begin to not be able to tell your own autobiographical story. And you begin to tell someone else's autobiographical story because that's what's most immediate to you, because those and neuronal transmissions that go to where your survival mechanisms get interfered with. And so when we talk about the definition of family, whose definition and for what purpose? We must define our own purpose. The second D, desire. Do you have the desire? Do we have the desire to be sustaining, to be enhancing and enduring for ourselves and our families and our children? What does that mean? That means that when you're talking about desire, that's the intent. Are we intentional in our desire for survival and thriving? Or are we just listening to what everybody else says and going along to get along because I got to pay this bill? And I'm going to sit back and wait on the Lord. And anybody that's heard me talk know that there's a passage that I learned as a child. God helps those who what? There, you got my case. And so what is our intention? I'm throwing these out because most of the time we are so busy trying to survive that we don't have the opportunity to engage in the luxury of thinking for ourselves. And so our children learn just how to react and not how to create and how to make for a future that is inherent upon our sustainability and our enhanceability. And so when we talk about the desire and the intent, the question that I have to ask my brothers and sisters is, are you dependable? Because in a family dynamic, I have to depend on you to help me. I may not like what you did yesterday as a brother or a sister, but I have to depend on you. And when I grew up, in my family, they said, you help your family before you help somebody else. And you keep your family business where? In the family. And so now that we have been looking at reality TV and all of these other things on Facebook and Twitter, we are telling all of our stuff. And when you do that, you make your family, including yourself, vulnerable. Vulnerable to attack, because then people know where you live. You've already forgotten your own story and some other lie to make yourself look good on Facebook with friends that you don't even know. I got 1,000 friends on Facebook. Really? You don't even know these people and you're telling all your business. And so in the issue of the desirability of the intent to survive as a people and as a strong family, are you dependable Are you reliable? And are you accountable? Because a lot of us are not accountable. We have a common expression, and I said this last week at the Black Psychiatrist Conference, and I've heard people use this word at this conference, and I want to, first of all, start out by asking you to please change your vocabulary, because trying and hoping and wishing do not equate to acting. Let me make something very clear to you. There is no word in any language but English that talks about trying. You either do something or you don't. You either did or you didn't. You either will or you won't. Trying does not cross from the right brain to the left brain across the corpus callosum for you to do anything. So I call trying a PZ word, a mental masturbatory word. It feels good, but it ain't the real thing. So that we're all very clear that when you're up here telling me what you're trying to do, I know as a neuropsychiatrist, you're not doing dooley squat. You just try to make yourself feel good and appease me too. You're talking to a shrink. The third D of the 7 Ds is duty. We have a duty as people to raise our children in the most healthiest, secure, and safe environment possible. We have been derelict as a collective in that duty. Or ancient Egypt, as you call it. You're judged, your heart is judged against the feather of truth. They call it mat, or mat, whichever way you want to pronounce it, M-A''A'-T. And that stands for truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, duty, order, and reciprocity. And baby, what goes around comes around, and we get ready to get smacked real good in the face. Because we have bought into the myth of being inferior, of being less than, of being broke, of being the antithesis of what is not great. And when we bought into that myth, we then begin to create a mental image of being less than. We are the original people. Everybody else is a variation on the theme. How in the world, if you are the original people, can you ask your wayward children for advice? Europeans were created from us. Y'all are mighty quiet on that. You don't believe that, do you? You don't believe that you were here first. Well, maybe some of you all weren't. I don't know. But you're not going to talk to me about missing your duty, because in the context of our ancestors, in the context of our history, we have an obligation to. And I said last week when we were at the conference in Nassau that I'm reminded of the fact that I used to treat the pilot for the Shah of Iran. And when the Shah was deposed, they came to the U.S. and began an Oriental rug business. And Mr. Amiri said to me one day after I'd been treating his family for about 4 years, he said, "Dr. Newton, I have a question to ask you about your people." Well, anytime I hear the buzzword, your people, you know, my hand went on my hip. My head started moving, and I'm getting ready to do battle with this Arab brother, okay? Mr. Amiri, what do you mean? And he says, well, I don't understand how your people could send their children to their enemy and expect them to have anything but contempt for them when they come back home, because no self-respecting Arab would ever let a Jew do that to their child. That's a deep piece. And I'm not castigating Jews or Arabs. I'm just saying, when he said that, my head straightened up, my hand came off my hip. And I had to look at this man and say, I don't have an answer for that. And say the trauma that created an inability to transfer data to the frontal lobe where we have to make rational decisions has been blocked. And again, as I said earlier, we don't tell our autobiographical story, we tell somebody else's. So that is our duty. The third D, the fourth D, I know y'all with me, thank God. No, I did 3. No, dependable and desire the same. No. If you desire and you have intention, you're going to be dependable, right? And duty was the third. The fourth D is development. I want you to follow. You have a critical and committed issue that we have to become the people that will develop a world and a future for our children that is not like the one we are living in now. And in that context of development, why don't we have a media watchdog for Black people? When somebody says anything about Jewish people, they don't have 24 hours. They don't have 20 minutes. Somebody is on there holding them accountable. We let people say and do anything about us, and we don't even whimper. We don't whimper because we've been conditioned to be quiet and to contract our anal sphincters so we don't do anything. Down. Okay. So that we, in the context, we don't even know how to defend ourselves. We're fighting just to survive, that we have forgotten the lessons that our ancestors taught us. And so in the context of development, we have to have media watchdogs, policy institutes, think tanks that work, pontificate, but that give information to our so-called leaders. And we need to remember that if they're not serving us, I don't care what color their skin is, we need to get rid of them. Period. Period. It's not enough to just vote Black. Is acting white. Not enough. Not enough. And so in that regard, we have to look at the context of how we view the developmental phase of our existence. Do we have a strategy for survival and thriving? It's not just enough to get over or to go along to get along. We have to look at a strategy because the next D is defense. We are at war, African people. And until you realize we are at war, then you are part of the problem and you need to get on out of the way and make room for the rest of us who are out here trying to survive. No, this is not the lesson you thought you were going to hear about the Black family. But this is the lesson we need to hear because we are not creating a safe space for our children to grow, to enhance, and to be the best that they can be. We have created a place out of fear. And to the degree that we were intimidated during the transatlantic slave trade, we still live with that fear that is carried in the interstices of the red nucleus of our brain. Operating, layering down from one generation to the next, those memories that make us act crazy when it comes to each other. We will kiss Chuck's behind. But I'll be ready to do battle with you over a little bit of nothing. Nothing. So you learn that stuff from your ancestors on the plantation. And let me tell you something. Memory is transmissible through generations. Transmissible. So if you've been a lackey all your life, it may end up being lackeys because they watch you and they learn from you. They may not say, but you say, do what I say, but don't do what I do. And you are supposed to be an example of an elder Some of y'all just old. You're not an elder, you're just old. And your behavior is like delayed adolescence. And you're a parent? Mercy. Oh, mercy. And so in the context of a defense, we have to learn to protect all that is ours. We must protect it. We must guard it with our life. Anything and anybody can walk into our neighborhoods and we don't say nothing.
That's right. That is right.
You try to go right neighborhood, somebody gonna be out that door. Police will be called before you step out of the car. It's about us that we allow anything and anybody to infect our children. And part of that defense is that we have to be protective of the kind of abuse that goes on within our own families. Many of you have seen me on Hidden Colors 4, and you know I talk about child abuse in the African community. We have sexually and physically abused our children to the degree that we have these difficulties in our interpersonal relationships between men and women. Nothing about that, do you? Because the reality of it is that the failure to protect our children will end up being our destruction, because we are getting old and they're going to have to be the ones to take care of us. And they are mirror neurons, which are their empathy centers, don't exist for some of you. Because they've learned from the Europeans. They've learned from the Europeans not to care. And when we abdicate our moral and ethical responsibilities by allowing abuse to occur within our families, what are we saying? We are saying that we are not valued. We are saying that our children are not worth protecting. And no place that our children live is safe. Safe in the churches, they're not safe at home, they're not safe at school, they're not safe anywhere. And I remember in the creation story in ancient Kemet, it says, after God created the world, he says, where can I stand? No safe place for your children to stand. And here we are. And some of you heard me speak before, being run by psychopaths in suits. They're in our churches, operations. They're in our organizations and institutions, in our schools, and yes, they're in our government. And if you never saw psychopaths at work before, you're getting ready to see it now. And as I said before, we've been spending our lives in the mental health field studying failed psychopaths. We studied the ones that got locked up. We haven't studied the ones who are successfully out here running a nation, bleeding you at your bank account, creating scenarios where you are not going to ever thrive. Let me move on. After defense, dollars. You just had a session on economic empowerment. I always say that Black folk in America have a problem with melanin and money. Melanin and money. We have real serious issues. The Jews have a saying in their community, on Friday, I have money back on Monday. Let me repeat that. I pay you on Friday, I have my money back on Monday. And guess whose money? Your money. You spend your time working for somebody else, not creating employment opportunities for your children. And I'm wondering, how many of you all have taught your children to save money? This is disgraceful. I mean, I thank you all for the ones that have. But did you see the majority of these hands did not go up? You let 5-year-olds make your financial purchasing decisions at the grocery store. Am I lying? But nowhere you talk about tithe into the church, but you don't tithe to yourself. Create life insurance so that when you die, your children are left destitute. You got a car insurance though. You know how to insure something that depreciates as soon as it comes off the lot. How to insure your life and the value of your children and your property. Most of us in America who are African American also have Native American blood running through our veins. And one thing our Native ancestors taught to us is the land, owning the land. How many of you all have thought about, if you don't have a house, looking at tax lien certificates? Plenty of money in tax lien certificates. And 3 or 4 of you all could get together and create that. I had a group of welfare mothers that were my patients. And they were talking about how the schools in their neighborhood were horrible. And how, in fact, they couldn't get some of the things, you know, the field trips and all these kinds of things that the other school got. I'm looking at my sisters. I'm treating them on a regular, weekly. They got nails done beautifully. They wear at least $100 tennis shoes. Cost more than mine did. And they're telling me they can't put anything together. So what I said to them was, in 2 groups. I want each of you to give $1 a week. You can do that because you tip your manicurist more than that. So $1 a week, and I want you to compound this interest over the next 18 months. And then come and talk to me about why you can't take your children to the Smithsonian or to all these other places that the other people do. It's a matter of mental reorganization. We have to rewire our neural network. Works have been confused because we bought into the myth and we bought into the media hype that to buy things will make you happy and to own things will make you have status. Last time I checked, everything that you bought, you probably threw away within a year. Am I right or wrong? Keep everything, okay? Lie. Lie. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about taking dollars that these people have talked about to you earlier and collaborating and collectively pooling your resources. Well, I don't trust them enough to save no money with them. And trust your oppressor. And you give your life to him. And you work for yourself and your community 5% of the time. You give everything else 95% of the time to your enemy, and you want to know why you can't get ahead? These counselors. The last D, and